Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to pause. Yes, pause, stop. Don't rush, don't chase, don't grasp, just be. In a world that celebrates doing, achieving, running, and accumulating, we have forgotten the most profound art, the art of nothingness. Doing nothing does not mean laziness. It does not mean emptiness. It means allowing life to flow through you without interference, without judgment, without the constant I must, I should, I will. Because paradoxically, when you do nothing, the universe begins to do everything for you. The mind quiets, the heart opens, and suddenly miracles appear where you never expected them. The key to transformation is not in the doing, but in the being. Tonight, let us explore how the stillness within you can awaken a change that the world outside cannot give. How doing nothing can indeed change everything. Stillness is not simply the absence of movement, it is the presence of awareness. In the modern world, we have been taught to equate motion with progress, noise with life, and activity with significance. Every day, from the moment we wake up, we are thrust into a whirlwind of schedules, tasks, and responsibilities. We run, we hurry, we chase, and yet somehow the deeper questions remain unanswered. The inner void remains unfilled. But stillness is a secret, a subtle power that the mind often overlooks. To be still is not to be weak, it is the source of immense strength. In the quiet moments, when the mind ceases its endless chatter, when the ego rests and the body allows itself to simply be, there is a flowering of energy that cannot be found in action alone. The river of life flows continuously, yet we rarely stop to drink from it. Stillness is the pause where the river becomes visible, where its depth can be felt, where the reflection of the sky becomes clear in its waters. When you cultivate stillness, you are entering a space where the ordinary perception of life begins to shift. You begin to realize that the world is not only about doing, producing, achieving, and consuming. There is a dimension beyond the realm of cause and effect, beyond the tyranny of time, where transformation occurs effortlessly. It is in this stillness that creativity emerges, insights arise, and the mind experiences a rare clarity that no amount of effort can manufacture. Stillness allows the heart to speak, the soul to breathe, and the being to become whole. Many people fear silence because it exposes the unexamined corners of their consciousness. Yet it is exactly in these quiet corners that the seeds of awakening are sown. To embrace stillness, one must confront the illusion that motion equals value. The ego thrives on doing, on constant activity, because doing keeps one distracted from the eternal self. The ego fears nothingness, fears silence, fears the pause, because in stillness it loses control, loses the sense of importance it has constructed. Yet the paradox is this: in stillness, the true self awakens, and a power far greater than the ego begins to emerge. This power is subtle, silent, and profoundly transformative. It is not loud, it does not demand recognition, yet it has the capacity to change your life in ways that frantic activity never can. Stillness also teaches patience. In a culture obsessed with instant gratification, patience is almost a lost art. We want results immediately, solutions quickly, and experiences without delay. But the depth of life is revealed only when one can sit, unhurried, with an open heart, allowing the natural rhythm of existence to unfold. In stillness, time itself seems to expand. The moments become rich with experience. The mind, which usually moves like a storm, begins to settle, like dust falling to the bottom of a jar. And when the mind settles, a remarkable phenomenon occurs: clarity. Decisions become easier, intuition becomes sharper, and life begins to flow with a sense of effortless alignment. Furthermore, stillness is the gateway to understanding the nature of change. When you are constantly moving, change is external, noisy, and sometimes frightening. Yet when you are still, you begin to perceive the subtle currents that guide life, the invisible threads that connect cause and effect, the rhythm that orchestrates existence itself. In this awareness, change is no longer a threat but a dance. You do not push or force, you simply allow, and the universe works in harmony with your being. This is why true leaders, true visionaries, and enlightened beings value stillness above all else. In the stillness, they find the source of their power, the clarity of their vision, and the courage to act when action is truly necessary. The body too responds to stillness. In our constant striving, tension accumulates, stress dominates, and vitality diminishes. But when we embrace moments of pause, the body regenerates, energy flows, and a deep sense of harmony emerges. Stillness becomes a medicine, a nourishment, a rejuvenation that no external source can provide. It reconnects us to the rhythm of nature, to the heartbeat of the earth, to the silent music that surrounds all existence. Letting go is one of the most misunderstood acts in human life. The world teaches us to hold on tightly, hold on to achievements, relationships, beliefs, and possessions. We are trained to cling to what is familiar, to what feels secure, to what defines us, because the ego thrives on attachment. Yet in this very clinging, life's true essence is obscured. The art of letting go is not about weakness or surrender. To despair, it is an act of profound courage, a recognition that the world is impermanent and that the self is far greater than any temporary circumstance. To let go is to release the mind from its endless suffering, to free the heart from the chains of desire, and to allow existence to flow without resistance. Most people feel letting go because they equate it with loss. They believe that to release something is to diminish themselves, to lose control, to invite chaos. But the paradox is that by holding on, we imprison ourselves, and by releasing, we open to freedom. Letting go is not a denial of reality. It is an acceptance of life as it is, in all its unpredictability and mystery. The moment you release the need to manipulate, to control, to force, you open a space where the universe can operate in ways far more intelligent than the mind ever could. This intelligence is subtle, silent, and often invisible, but it brings harmony and alignment that striving can never achieve. To truly understand letting go, one must first understand the nature of attachment. Attachment arises when the mind identifies with transient things, when the heart invests in that which is impermanent, and when the ego convinces us that our value lies in possession or recognition. The more you cling, the more you suffer, because everything that is held too tightly eventually slips away. Flowers bloom and fade, seasons change, people come and go, and circumstances transform. Yet the mind resists this natural flow, creating tension, anxiety, and fear. The art of letting go is to observe this resistance without judgment, to allow life to move, and to remain untouched by the impermanence that surrounds you. Letting go is also the path to love. True love does not grasp, it does not possess, it does not demand. When you cling to another, you imprison their spirit and diminish your own. But when you let go, you allow love to breathe, to expand, and to deepen in its natural form. Love that is free from attachment is not fragile, it is vast, resilient, and transformative. In the same way, letting go of past failures, regrets, and mistakes allows the self to experience a love for life that is unbounded by history, unconfined by fear, and unhindered by expectations. The art of letting go is also a meditation. It is a practice of witnessing the mind and heart without interference. When a thought arises, let it be. When a feeling comes, let it flow. When circumstances challenge you, observe them without clutching, without resisting, without judgment. In this practice, the self becomes like water, flowing effortlessly around obstacles, nourishing life wherever it touches, and reflecting the sky without distortion. The more you practice letting go, the more you realize that peace is not something to be achieved through doing, but through releasing. The more you release, the more life becomes effortless. Effortless in a way that is profoundly liberating. Letting go also cultivates trust. When you release the need to control, you begin to trust existence itself. You discover that life, despite its unpredictability, has an intelligence that guides you, nurtures you, and supports you in ways you cannot foresee. This trust is not passive, it is active, alive, and dynamic. It allows you to move through life without fear, to embrace uncertainty, and to dance with change. Every moment becomes an opportunity to witness the mystery of existence, to participate in its unfolding, and to align with the rhythm that is greater than any plan the mind could create. Letting go transforms the relationship with time. The past no longer dominates, the future no longer terrifies, and the present becomes a gift. In this presence, life is not a struggle, and the mind is not a battlefield. Instead, the mind becomes a mirror, reflecting the clarity, peace, and beauty of being. The heart, freed from obsession and clinging, opens to a joy that is not dependent on circumstance, recognition, or achievement. And the spirit, unburdened by attachment, begins to soar in dimensions of freedom, creativity, and expansion that were previously unimaginable. Insight is not a product of thinking, it is a gift of silence. The mind is always busy, always jumping from one thought to another, always seeking, analyzing, planning, comparing, judging. In this endless chatter, the truth remains hidden. Noise cannot reveal what silence can. Movement cannot show the stillness within. Reasoning cannot uncover what simply observing can. Inner silence is the doorway to understanding, the space where clarity arises without effort, and where the answers you have been seeking emerge naturally, effortlessly, and unexpectedly. Most people confuse knowledge with insight, accumulation of information with wisdom, and mental activity with understanding. But real insight is not learned, it is witnessed. It is not forced. It is discovered when the mind becomes quiet, when the heart opens, and when the soul is allowed to breathe. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness. Even in a noisy world, one can cultivate inner silence, a state in which the mind does not react compulsively, where the ego does not demand attention, and where the spirit becomes attentive to subtleties that usually pass unnoticed. In this silence, one begins to notice the patterns that guide life, the causes behind effects, the hidden rhythms that orchestrate events. The ordinary mind sees fragments and becomes frustrated, restless, and confused. The silent mind, however, sees the whole. It does not separate, it does not cling, it does not judge, it simply witnesses. And in this witnessing, It blooms like a flower in the desert, unexpected, radiant, and transformative. The reason silence awakens insight is because thinking alone cannot reach the deeper layers of existence. Thinking is linear, fragmented, and bound by past experiences and future anticipations. The mind can analyze, calculate, and organize, but it cannot touch the essence of life. Insight, on the other hand, arises from a state of total receptivity, where the mind becomes a mirror reflecting reality as it is without distortion. It is in the moments of quiet meditation, in the pauses between thoughts, and in the spaces where the mind ceases to grasp that the most profound realizations occur. One may sit quietly by a river, or in a garden, or simply in one's room, and suddenly the heart understands what the mind could never deduce. This understanding is not intellectual, it is experiential, intuitive, and alive. Silence also dissolves the boundaries between the observer and the observed. When the mind is noisy, one feels separate, isolated, and alienated from life. The constant dialogue of judgments, comparisons, and desires creates a barrier between the self and existence. But in silence, this barrier dissolves. The self does not need to intervene, control, or manipulate. One begins to see the interconnectedness of all things, the way every moment contains its own teaching, the way every experience carries a hidden meaning. Insight arises naturally in this state because the mind is no longer an obstacle and the heart is no longer closed. The intelligence of life flows freely, unobstructed by fear, resistance, or attachment. Many people seek insight desperately, yet they cannot find it because they try to grasp it with the mind. Insight cannot be acquired. It cannot be reached by effort. Effort, striving, and searching create noise, and noise blocks the perception of subtle truths. True insight comes when the mind is silent, when the ego rests, when one simply observes without interference. In that space, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, the mundane becomes sacred, and the simple act of being becomes a source of revelation. Even challenges, obstacles, and suffering reveal their lessons in silence, because the mind is no longer distorting experience with fear or desire. The beauty of inner silence is that it awakens not only understanding but also creativity. When the mind is quiet, the heart is open, and the soul is free. New ideas, new solutions, and new visions arise naturally. The intelligence that operates in silence is holistic, organic, and harmonious, unlike the fragmented solutions of a restless mind. This intelligence is not limited to the intellectual realm. It touches the emotional, physical, and spiritual dimensions, bringing a deep sense of alignment and wholeness. People who cultivate inner silence begin to notice subtle patterns, anticipate changes, and respond to life with grace, clarity, and confidence. Silence also teaches patience and presence. In the noise of thought, one is always ahead of life or trapped in the past, never fully present. Insight requires the ability to witness without interference, to allow time for understanding to arise, and to trust that clarity will emerge when the moment is ripe. The silent mind is not hurried, it does not force, it does not manipulate. It observes, receives, and understands in its own rhythm. The intelligence that emerges in this space is not forced. It is organic, alive, and profoundly liberating. The paradox of inaction is one of the most profound truths of life, yet it is one that the mind struggles to accept. We have been taught that action, movement, and constant effort are the keys to success, happiness, and fulfillment. The culture celebrates doing, achieving, producing, and striving as if these are the only ways to measure value. Yet often, the more we try to force life, the more it resists us. The more we push, plan, and control, the more tangled and confused our existence becomes. The paradox is that sometimes the greatest transformation occurs not through effort, but through letting go, through stillness, through what appears to be doing nothing. It is in the spaces between actions, in the moments of pause, that life orchestrates its most profound changes. Inaction does not mean laziness or negligence. It does not mean apathy or passivity. True inaction is a state of conscious non-doing, a space where the mind and ego are not desperately trying to manipulate or control circumstances. It is a deep trust in the intelligence of existence, a surrender to the flow of life, and a recognition that not everything requires intervention. Many spiritual traditions speak of this as the art of effortless being, a state in which life seems to move through you, rather than you trying to move through life. It is paradoxical because to the ordinary mind, non-doing seems counterproductive, even frightening, but it is precisely this non-doing that allows the invisible forces of life to operate unseen and yet profoundly transformative. When you are constantly active, you are often responding to superficial needs, fears, and desires, rather than the deeper currents of life. Action driven by anxiety, ambition, or compulsion rarely yields true results. It may create temporary appearances of success, but it cannot generate the depth of insight, creativity, or fulfillment that arises when the mind is calm, receptive, and non-interfering. Inaction, in its true sense, allows the mind to pause, the heart to open, and the inner wisdom to surface. Is in this pause that the seeds of understanding, clarity, and transformation germinate, nurtured by the quiet. Intelligence of existence itself. The paradox of inaction is most evident in nature. Trees do not strain to grow, rivers do not force their flow, the sun does not struggle to rise. Everything unfolds in its own rhythm, effortlessly, yet with precision purpose. When we observe nature, we see that life thrives not through frantic effort, but through alignment with the natural order. Human beings, in their desperation to control and achieve, often move against this order, creating stress, tension, and disharmony. Inaction or conscious non-doing is the way to realign ourselves with the natural rhythm of life, to allow change to occur organically, and to participate in the unfolding of existence without unnecessary interference. This paradox also applies to personal growth and transformation. Many people chase happiness, success, and enlightenment through relentless activity, as if they can manufacture these states through effort alone. Yet true growth often comes when one stops trying so hard, when one allows experiences, emotions, and circumstances to be exactly as they are, without interference. In the stillness of inaction, insight arises, patterns become visible, and life begins to correct itself in ways that the mind could never plan. The paradox is that by stepping back, by ceasing to struggle, one often moves forward more effectively than through constant striving. Inaction is closely tied to the art of trust. It requires faith in the intelligence of existence, in the unfolding of events, and in one's own capacity to respond when necessary. This trust is not passive resignation, it is a dynamic openness, an alert awareness that allows life to guide, rather than be forced. By practicing inaction, one cultivates patience, humility, and a deep understanding that not all things can be achieved through effort, and that sometimes the greatest results arise from doing nothing at all. The paradox also teaches discernment. In a world obsessed with action, it becomes difficult to distinguish between what truly requires intervention and what will resolve naturally. Inaction sharpens awareness, allowing one to see clearly when action is necessary and when it is not. It is not avoidance or procrastination, it is the wisdom to recognize that life has its own momentum, and that sometimes stepping aside, observing, and allowing is the most powerful action one can take. In this way, inaction becomes a form of intelligence, a conscious participation in the dance of existence, and a recognition that doing nothing is sometimes the most profound way of doing everything. Trusting the process is one of the most profound yet most neglected arts of life. Human beings are trained to control, to plan, to manipulate outcomes, to demand certainty in a world that is inherently uncertain. From childhood, we are told that success comes from effort, discipline, and constant striving, that we must push and force life into alignment with our desires. Yet, in doing so, we often create tension, frustration, and anxiety. Because life is not a machine, it is not predictable, and it does not bend permanently to the demands of the ego. Trusting the process is not passive resignation, it is a radical surrender to the intelligence of existence, a faith that life itself is capable of guiding us in ways deeper, wiser, and more creative than the mind ever could. The mind struggles to trust because it wants control. It wants to know the next step, the guaranteed outcome, the perfect sequence of events. But life is a mystery, a river flowing in directions unseen and unpredictable. To trust the process is to stop clinging to certainty, to stop trying to dictate every detail, and to allow the river of existence to carry you. It is paradoxical because the mind believes that action and interference are always necessary, yet often life moves most perfectly when you release the need to force it. In this release, a new intelligence emerges, a wisdom that cannot be manufactured, a clarity that arises only when the ego steps aside. Trusting the process also requires patience. We live in an age of immediacy where instant gratification has become the norm, where the mind wants results now, and where we measure success by speed rather than depth. Yet the most profound transformations in life are never rushed. They occur in their own rhythm, in their own timing, and often in ways that are invisible at first. To trust the process is to learn to wait without anxiety, to embrace uncertainty without fear, and to remain present while life unfolds. Patience is not passive. It is alert, awake, and receptive. It is a readiness to act when necessary, but without the compulsive need to force the outcome. The process is intelligent, even when it appears chaotic. Life does not operate randomly, it has a rhythm, a pattern, a subtle order that may be invisible to the restless mind. When you trust the process, you begin to see that even challenges, obstacles, and failures are not meaningless. They are part of the unfolding essential threads in the tapestry of growth and evolution. Every difficulty carries a lesson, every loss contains a gift, and every delay has a purpose that is beyond immediate comprehension. Trust is the lens through which these hidden patterns become visible, the attitude that allows the mind to relax and the heart to open, Trusting the process also involves letting go of attachment to outcomes. Most suffering arises from attachment to success, to recognition, to love, to security. The mind clings, resists, and demands, creating tension when life does not comply. Trusting the process means allowing life to move netter, alive without forcing it into predetermined shapes. It is a recognition that the path itself, with all its twists, turns, and uncertainties, is more important than the destination. In this awareness, every step becomes meaningful, every moment becomes a teacher, and the ego stops obstructing the flow of existence. There is also a spiritual dimension to trusting the process. The ego wants to design and control, but the spirit knows that surrender is the doorway to freedom. To trust the process is to allow life to guide you, to open to experiences that cannot be predicted, and to discover wisdom that is far beyond calculation. In this surrender, there is a paradoxical empowerment. You are not weaker, you are not passive, you are not helpless. Instead, you become a participant in a vast intelligence, aligned with the rhythm of the universe and capable of responding to life with grace, creativity, and profound insight. Trusting the process transforms fear into curiosity. When the mind obsesses over control, it becomes anxious about outcomes, fearful of failure, and hesitant to move. But when trust replaces fear, every moment becomes an opportunity to learn, to experience, and to grow. The heart opens to possibilities that the mind could never imagine, and the soul begins to dance in harmony with the flow of existence. Action, when it arises from trust, is no longer frantic, compulsive, or destructive. It becomes precise, effective, and alive. It is aligned not with the ego's demands, but with the intelligence of life itself, creating a harmony between effort and surrender, doing and allowing, movement and stillness presence, is the forgotten art in a world obsessed with productivity. From the moment we wake, we are trained to do, to work, to plan, to achieve, to optimize, to measure every moment in terms of output. Productivity has become a virtue. Being has become a burden or even a sin. Yet no amount of doing, achieving, or producing can substitute for presence. Presence is not something to accomplish. It is a state of awareness, a deep rootedness in the now, a connection to life as it unfolds. It is the recognition that life is not a series of tasks to be completed, but a continuous living experience to be embraced. While productivity is measured by results, presence is measured by consciousness. And it is in consciousness that true transformation occurs. Being present requires the mind to stop its endless plotting and calculating. Most of the time, the mind is elsewhere, reliving the past, worrying about the future, or imagining outcomes that may never come. This restless activity blinds us to the richness of each moment. When you cultivate presence, even the simplest act, drinking tea, walking, breathing, becomes an encounter with reality, an opportunity to awaken fully. Presence allows you to see life in its totality, to notice subtleties that are usually ignored, and to experience joy, clarity, and harmony no external achievement can provide. World may reward productivity, but it is presence that rewards the soul. Presence also dissolves anxiety. The drive for productivity is rooted in fear, fear of failure, fear of irrelevance, fear of time slipping away. The mind believes that constant doing will protect it, that ceaseless effort will guarantee security, recognition, or happiness. Yet, this frantic activity only increases tension and disconnection. When you anchor yourself in the present moment, fear loses its grip. You realize that life cannot be fully controlled, that outcomes are uncertain, and that existence flows according to its own intelligence. In this surrender, peace arises naturally, not as a result of action, but as a consequence of awareness. True productivity arises from presence, paradoxically. When the mind is still, when the ego steps aside, when the heart is awake, action becomes effortless, precise, and impactful. The difference is subtle but profound. Productivity driven by anxiety is noisy, compulsive, and scattered, while productivity arising from presence is harmonious, effective, and creative. When you are fully present, every action is imbued with consciousness, every decision resonates with clarity, and every effort aligns with the deeper rhythm of life. Presence transforms doing into an art, work into meditation, and effort into flow. Presence also deepens relationships. Most people interact from a place of distraction, obligation, or expectation. They are physically present but mentally absent, their attention divided, their awareness scattered. In presence, one listens fully, sees clearly, and responds authentically. Relationships become vibrant, meaningful, and nourishing because they are not based on achievement, validation, or calculation, but on genuine connection and awareness. Presence allows empathy, understanding, and love to flourish in ways that productivity alone cannot cultivate. The practice of presence is simple, but demands courage. It requires stopping the endless striving, resisting the societal pressure to constantly achieve, and choosing to be fully awake in the moment. This choice may feel uncomfortable at first because it confronts the ego, which fears stillness and being without purpose. Yet, in this discomfort lies transformation. Presence teaches patience, attentiveness, and surrender. It reveals the extraordinary within the ordinary, the sacred within the mundane, and the eternal within the fleeting. Presence reconnects you with life itself. Productivity measures the external, the visible, the measurable. Presence immerses you in the invisible, the subtle, the immeasurable. It is a dialogue with existence, a communion with reality, and a recognition that life is not a series of problems to solve, but a mystery to experience. Every breath, every heartbeat, every sensation becomes an opportunity to awaken, to observe, and to participate fully in the dance of life. Presence is not a goal. It is a state of being, and it transforms every moment into a doorway of insight, joy, and liberation.